Yeah, morning once again. I want to welcome you to another program, The State of the Nation, comes to you through the Forbes Burnham Foundation. We want to take time off this week to look at Forbes Burnham, independence, liberation, and other major contributions that he has made to this nation. With me in the studio today is chairman of the foundation. Once again, we started the discussion on the last program, Mr. Vincent Alexander, and we're going to continue along the same path this week. Before I go deep into the program, we have organized a number of activities during the month of March as well as in the month of February to commemorate the birth anniversary of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, that great leader of the region. I want to take this opportunity to ask for an update because quite recently there have been lots of talk about the award that was supposed to be given by the South African government to Forbes Burnham in relation to his contribution towards the liberation of South Africa. I want to ask Mr. Alexander, before we go in deeper into the program, what is the latest on that award?
Well, first of all, let me take the opportunity today to say to all those out there who are listening, we wish you a very happy independence. We know it might be trying times, but one must recognize that some 47 years ago, under the leadership of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, Ghana became an independent nation, and today we celebrate that day. So I take the opportunity on behalf of the Burnham Foundation to wish each and every one of you happy independence. Now, in the news recently, and still current, is the question of the Oliver Tambo Award, the conferral of which was deferred by the South African government, the conferral of that award on Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham. The Burnham Foundation, like many others, expressed its views to the South African government on the matter. We don't feel that the South African government had any obligation to give Burnham the award, but certainly they would have given some thought to it before they made the decision, and we found it strange that they would defer the award, and we wrote to them expressing that view, and also expressing the view that many of those who sought to criticize them for giving him the award were not, in fact, looking at the basis for that award. The basis, which is very, very simple. In the South African official documentation, it is specified that the award is for friendship towards the South African people, and no one can question that Burnham exhibited that friendship unmatched by most towards the South African people, and therefore was worthy of the award. It is for them to make the decision, but we just thought that it was strange that after they would decide to give him the award, and given the fact that he qualified, undoubtedly, and even his detractors have admitted he qualifies. In today's papers we see Chetty, Joey Jagan himself saying yes, Burnham did qualify for that award, and that in fact it's not a matter of just Burnham. It was a matter of the Guyanese people, because Burnham was acting on behalf of the Guyanese people when he gave his support to South Africa and Southern Africa more generally in the course of their liberation struggle. So that's where it's at. We wrote to them, I'm told many others wrote. We have not heard from them. We didn't write asking them to give Burnham any award. We just wrote to them indicating that we found it strange that they would, on good grounds, have decided to give the award, and then they would be responding, apparently, to critics, none of whom could criticize Burnham's role in terms of his contribution to the liberation of Southern Africa. In fact, looking at some of the media, I remember in the early days reading what one Guyanese said in relation to Burnham having the award. She said that he shouldn't get the award because she was made to work at Hope Estate, privately owned estate of Burnham. Now, if people are going to go so low in terms of the truth, then we're in sad days. her argument there in cyberspace was that she worked at Burnham's private estate. And everybody knows that Hope never belonged to Burnham. Hope has always been a state entity.
That's right.
And not belonging to Burnham. So there's a lot of falsehood and a lot of bitterness that has informed some people's reaction, but a reaction to a matter which is unrelated to what they are speaking about. However, for those of you out there who would wish to know more of the Burnham's contribution to national liberation and to independence, the Burnham Foundation will be hosting a symposium on Friday of this week, Friday, May 31st, at 5 p.m. at the St. Stanislaus Auditorium. And that symposium is entitled Burnham and National Liberation. There we will be giving out information on Burnham's contribution to national liberation in Africa and his contribution to national liberation, independence in Guyana. So the public at large, you're invited to this symposium to come, to hear, and in fact there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions as well. Two persons who worked closely with Burnham will be on that panel. Mr. Ashley Jackson, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, former rep to the United Nations, someone who is very much in the seat during the period of South African liberation, will be one of the panelists. Mr. Robert Corbin, who was integrally involved in Guyana at the time when Burnham contributed to national liberation, will also be on that panel. So you're invited to come out to hear what they have to say, to pose your questions, and to have some clarity on this question of Burnham and his contribution to national liberation at home and abroad. Once again, I take the opportunity to wish all of you out there, as we continue this program, a happy independence.
Yeah, Vincent, I myself would like to join you and our listeners wishing you happy 47th Independence Anniversary. You have touched on a very important subject, that is this award and the approach that Forbes Burnham took in relation to the South African people. One of the things that I observe is that in the world, in all the states around the world, you hear people talking about the need to have elections and to change the government or to change the leadership of this country and that country. The United States of America under President Barack Obama campaigned on slogans that I recall that was used by Forbes Burnham during his time in the leadership of this country. And one of the things or the slogan he used is that we can, we will, we must. So that, what is it? We can,
we must,
and we will. Yes, I remember that. One of the things I want you to focus on, there are people who can say they would like to have the leadership without understanding the issues at stake. Burnham was able to lead this country to independence. He was able to lead us to Republican status. And further to that, Burnham understood the issues at stake. And for some people, they felt that because there was change, there wasn't anything meaningful, and as a result of that, they can come about now to make criticism in terms of the approach he took. But Burnham, in my view, understood the requirements of the day and can be categorized as a transformational leader who understood the issues. A difference, say, between changing leadership and having a person who is a transformational person to change the direction of the country, understanding the issues at stake, and was able to take this country to the level to independence and Republican status. I want you to comment on Burnham's leadership in relation to, one, taking the country to independence and Republican status.
Clayton, you've touched on a very important point, the point of transformational leadership.
Of course.
You know, there are those who argue, and if you look at today's papers in the Chronicle, again, they are saying that Shelley Jagan was the one who championed independence. One cannot doubt that Shelley Jagan played a role in the struggle for independence and that he was one of the champions of independence. But one has to look at this matter in historical context. Both Chetty Jagan and Burnham studied overseas. Chetty returned before Burnham and started, call it the independence movement. Burnham returned and joined the movement. They were co-founders of the People's Progressive Party. Now, what happened? There are those who argue that Burnham was overtly ambitious and wanted to be the leader, and that it was that ambition that led to the problems that the country had. Those people do not recognize that there were some fundamental differences that arose very early between Burnham and Jagan. Jagan was a communist, and to a very, very large extent was a dogmatist. He was not very pragmatic and not very responsive to the world realities at the time. Burnham, on the other hand, was also associated with communism. History would tell you that Burnham in England was associated with the Communist Party at that time. History would also tell you that Burnham, as a youth leader in England, a student, attended one of the festivals of youth and students in Czechoslovakia, held under the auspices of WFD, the World Federation of Democratic Youth. So Burnham also has an origin and a history of being involved in the leftist movement. But in Guyana, Burnham recognized that you could not build communism or socialism, whatever you call it, in a colony. That your preference had to be, first and foremost, to decolonize. There is where he differed significantly from Jagan. Jagan seemed not to understand that the struggle had to be taken in stages, and that one could not seek to forge a socialist state in a colony, that what one had to do was first of all to decolonize. And so Burnham was prepared to tone down his leftist positions and leftist rhetoric in the interests of decolonization. Jagan was not prepared to do that, and by virtue of his unpreparedness to do that, wittingly or unwittingly, endangered the independence of Guyana. Yes, he wanted independence, but he did not have the strategic wit that was required to take us to independence, and endangered that independence by virtue of the relationships he sought to pursue with communist countries as a colony, by virtue of his rhetoric and the policies that he sought to pursue. Burnham recognized that that would not lead us to independence, and that would only cause a postponement of our independence. And so Burnham, whilst being leftist, was a strategist who recognized that he had to be pragmatic in terms of the geopolitical situation that existed at the time, and that we had to pursue the attainment of independence, and only then could we effectively seek, as an independent nation, to mold the destiny which we wanted to mold. And so, as we celebrate the 47th anniversary of independence, notwithstanding what they would say about the role of Chetty Jagan, it has to be recognized that it's the pragmatic, transformational leadership of Lyndon Fobbs Sampson Burnham, who understood the terrain which we were traversing and how to traverse that terrain, that made it possible for us in 1966 to acquire independence. He understood the nature of the Cold War. He understood we could not be fighting for communism in a colony. He understood we had to confront the question of independence from a nationalist perspective. And that's exactly what he did. And because of what he did, we succeeded by 1966 in acquiring independence. There are those who would say there were all sorts of deals that Burnham did and all sorts of engagements with imperialism and all of that. The fact of the matter is that he understood the terrain that he was traversing. He understood how to traverse that terrain. and successfully traversed it, and we acquired independence in 1966 thanks to the transformational leadership of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham.
Yeah, I said that I want to tell our viewers that I'm going to be opening the lines for call today for those of you who would like to make your contribution to this program. And to make sure that you understand, I raised that concept of transformational leadership because quite recently you hear people talking about change. But change, I could change from doing the things that I've been doing to doing something else without understanding deeply what this change that is required entails. So saying change is not just kind of mouthing it. You got to understand it. It has to be part of your very being because your whole goal is to transform. And I think Burnham's whole idea was to transform the society from where it was in every facet, including education, our culture, and everything. He understood what was required. And those are the kind of leadership, in my view. I think the country has reached a point now where it's just marking time. We're in motion, but we're not moving. We're in motion, we're not moving. He set the foundation, he laid all the pillars and everything for this country to advance. But today, when you look and see where we are in relation to those foundations that have been laid, it can only be described that we're marking time. And it is hope. I don't know what is it that is expected to come out of the symposium that is slated for the 31st. But I am very hopeful that young people will come out at St. Stanislaus on the 31st from 5 o'clock. From 5 o'clock to attend the symposium because we'll be addressing these issues with Forbes Burnham and liberation, Forbes Burnham and independence. Because it is my view, and it is the view of the foundation, that people need to know what this man has done, what has been his contribution, what foundation he has laid, what are the areas of advancement that he has brought about in this country. Those are issues that are very fundamental if we need to understand where we are, why we're marking time, and the kind of leadership that is required to give us that forward move. I want to go on further. You were talking about Burnham and liberation internationally. I would just like you to go back again on that question of liberation, because people talking about Forbes Burnham kind of contribution and what he did to the liberation struggle. I would like you to put what the state of affairs was in South Africa at the time that caused Forbes Burnham to take the decision on behalf of the Guyanese people to make the contributions that we have made, including monetary.
Well, first of all, Burnham saw the world as a whole and the dynamics of struggle in the world between the colonizers and the colonized. Burnham recognized that the colonized countries and the oppressed countries had to struggle collectively to overcome the status quo of imperialism. And so, going way back to the independence of India and the independence of Ghana, those were landmarks in the struggle against colonization. And many Guyanese, including Burnham, associated themselves with those landmarks. India in Asia, acquiring independence. Ghana in Africa, acquiring independence. Now, these countries, India and Ghana, were able to acquire independence through peaceful means, through negotiations and recognition of the colonizers that they had to give. But there were countries in Asia and in Africa in particular, where the colonizers were not prepared to give, where they felt they could hold on and continue to have colonies at their disposal. Countries that come to mind would be Mozambique, Namibia, now then Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. And to all of those countries, Burnham gave solidarity and made a contribution insofar as he could have, insofar as Ghana could have, to help in their liberation. But their liberation was different in that it involved an armed struggle because of the resistance of the colonizers to peaceful means as the basis for liberation. Now, South Africa was different in the sense that South Africa was not colonized from without at that time. It was colonized from within by the Boers, whites who had settled in South Africa, who had seized much of the South African lands and the state of South Africa, and imposed a regime of apartheid. Apartheid in which they saw the blacks, the native blacks, as being unequal to the whites.
Just for the purpose of viewers, because you may have school children who are listening to this program, I want you to just explain what apartheid is.
Well, in fact,
what that
apartheid
word really means.
It's a system of government where one set of people see themselves as superior to another set of people, and based on that superiority establish a regime in which in a country people are not treated equally. Some are treated as having greater rights than others. In the specific case of South Africa, the Africans could not travel freely in their country. They had to have passes to travel from one part of the country to another. They could not attend the same schools. They could not play the same games in the same fields with the South Africans, white South Africans. And they were treated as second-class citizens in their own country. And so that is what apartheid really meant. It meant a system of inequality that was institutionalized and saw official discrimination against one set of people, in this instance the native Africans of South Africa. So it is in that context that South Africa was also struggling for liberation from within against a regime that was within. And Burnham saw it as very important. If he really believed in the principles of human rights and the right to freedom of association and the right to sovereign rights of people, to support the struggle in South Africa as well. Now, Ghana has its limitations in terms of resources, but even with those limitations, we were able to give financial contributions to the liberation struggle in South Africa and Southern Africa. We were able almost in every forum. Ghana's strength really became its intellect. That's what Ghana's strength became. Small country, small population, but a highly literate and highly intellectual society. And Burnham was able to build his foreign service on the pillars of that intellect. And on that basis, Ghana was able to gain recognition throughout the world for its positions on issues, for its articulation on issues. And so at the level of United Nations, the Non-Aligned Movement, wherever it was, Ghana was sorted after to give its view. And Ghana did give its view and did in fact rise to many positions of chairmanship of committees that were involved in this issue of liberation for Africa and for South Africa. So we gave financial contributions. We supported the struggle at every forum where we could have. We also did internally, did a number of manifestations in support of the struggle. We still have the monument standing at Jumanayana there, that monument in honor of African liberation, where we had many of manifestations, including vigils in support of the liberation of the people of Africa. Then there came the challenge, the struggle in Angola being waged, and the involvement of the South Africans in that struggle. In Angola, there were three liberation movements, not united: UNITA, FNLA, and MPLA. MPLA was considered to be the more progressive of those movements, the one which would really bring about decolonization in Angola. And so, over time, we lent our support to MPLA. MPLA came under tremendous attack. On one hand, they were being attacked by the FNLA, who were backed by the imperialists. That was the internal liberation, not the internal liberation force. On the other hand, they were being attacked by the South Africans. They were being sandwiched by these external forces in South Africa, and were on the verge of defeat, one could say, because of the might of the South Africans and the pressure of the FNLA, who were supported by Zaire and other reactionary countries. And so the South Africans turned to the progressive world, the Angolans turned to the progressive world for help. And Cuba, as it is, international force, decided to send troops to assist in the struggle and liberation of Angola. Now, sending those troops required flying the troops to Angola. In fact, it was a very crucial time. MPLA was under tremendous pressure and may have caved in. And so timing became very important. And Cuba had to turn to some place for refueling to take the flight across the Atlantic. And they turned to Guyana after all others denied them. And Burnham collaborated and allowed the Cubans to fly through Guyana, refueling here, on to Angola to assist. And in fact, history would tell you that the arrival of those flights was very timely in terms of being able to stave off the attacks of the South Africans. And so Guyana contributed that way significantly to the liberation of Angola. The liberation of Angola then created an environment in which it was easier for the liberation of South Africa to be achieved. So indirectly, by its contribution to the liberation of Angola, Guyana also contributed to the liberation of South Africa. Because then Angola, being a neighboring country, helped in creating the environment and atmosphere and facilitating the struggle of the ANC as they sought to liberate South Africa. So Guyana's role was very, very critical in the liberation. And I mean, there are people who would say funny things. Some of them who claim to be intellectuals, and Burnham was doing this because he wanted to create a certain image. But his position was consistent throughout the years. Very, very consistent. It wasn't a one-off engagement. It was very, very consistent, both in terms of his articulation of the position and in terms of his spiritual and physical and monetary contributions towards the liberation of
South Africa.
Southern Africa and South Africa in particular.
Right, I want to remind our viewers that the lines are now open. You can make your calls and we will be taking your contribution to this program. I want to go to Burnham and independence. That is local kind of liberation. Burnham returned from England. Cheddi Jagan had started the movement and he came and joined the struggle. I should point out that both parties, Forbes Burnham and Cheddi Jagan, are individuals that I have an unswerving respect for as far as politics is concerned in this country. And Burnham, having come back to Guyana, recognizing the need for independence, decided to pursue a path of association and support to Cheddi Jagan in this struggle. But when we moved to the point of receiving our independence from Britain at the time, what I needed you to look at was the state of affairs that existed then in Guyana, because independence meant that we would have had to have had our own police force, our own army, our own public service. It meant that the support of the British would no longer be there. It meant that we had to be on our own, so to speak. But that required a particular type of disposition, planning, and so on to effect this changeover. I want you to comment on that aspect of Burnham's input in relation to independence.
Well, Clayton, independence could not simply mean the lowering of one flag and the raising of another. Independence had to mean a change in the lives of the people.
Just before you go on, I see the lines are going, so let me take this call. Morning, you're on the air.
Hello?
Morning, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
I observed this discussion for some time now, and what I want to know is this. How do you equate the thousands of lives that Burnham has saved through his contribution? How do you compare that with this award that so many people are arguing about? Now that's my question. How do you equate
the thousands of lives he has saved?
Saving the lives of thousands of South Africans.
Yes.
Yes? Saving those lives. How do you equate that with the death of one man with regard to this award? You know, I see it's so inconceivable.
Yeah, you find it mind-boggling.
It is.
I myself find it kind of mind-boggling, and I think that one of the reasons why, like Mr. Alexander has just pointed out, the South African established a premise upon which this award was being given. And then to just say that they have suspended the award, I find that myself a little strange. Having recognized, they know, they don't need to go to any, and all they need to do is just go back in history and they would see what Forbes Burnham has done.
Quite so.
Thank you for your contribution, sir.
Okay, then.
Yes, Vincent.
I don't think that there is any equation to be drawn. The people who are drawing the equation are equating apples to mangoes. The question of Burnham's contribution to the liberation of South Africa and the Oliver Tambo Award stands alone in that regard, because the award is clearly intended for someone who's contributed in a meaningful way to the friendship and solidarity in the effort of South Africa to be liberated, and there's no question about that. The Rodney issue is quite unrelated as far as I'm concerned to that. That's an issue that we can probably discuss at another time in its own right, except to say that the government of the day has an obligation, based on a parliamentary motion which was supported by the People's National Congress, to have an inquiry into this matter. It seems as if there are those who think not having an inquiry is to their benefit. Rather than all of these accusations and all of these logical conclusions that are not based on fact, there should be this inquiry so this matter could be put to rest.
Let me take a call here, Vincent. I see, like I've lost the caller.
Yes, there should be an inquiry.
Morning, you're on the air.
Good morning to you, gentlemen.
Morning, sir.
And my take on the issue of the award, well, I think that South Africa should stop considering anything and look at the man for what he was in helping the liberation of the many South Africans who were fighting for that cause. Because he did it without flinching. And you remember in the Olympics when he was the one that mounted and said that he don't think that there should be any participation of any African country against their, you know, he really raised heavy points for them to open the eyes to look at the situation in South Africa and what was happening, to bring it to the fore. So there should be no consideration of the Rodney issue.
Yeah, Mr. Burnham made it clear.
Yeah. The man who made the point of the Rodney and Burnham issue, he should think, because he, as a Jamaican, must remember that when Rodney was there and bringing out the, you know, that fight for the African peoples in Jamaica, they put him out. And it was Burnham who took him in and brought him home to, with that same liberated spirit that he had, so that he could have, you know, encourage the African people in this country how to do it. So this whole thing about Burnham and whatever little political aspect of it, that is a different thing. But it was he who brought Rodney home, and that shouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
And the other point is I am looking at what has been doing in this independence celebration. Now, the many things that you have been hearing on the radio, people have got to learn to realize that those things were Burnham instituted instruments of making a better Guyana.
That's right.
Music that has been playing about the GNS tribe to, to go and occupy the land. All of those things surrounding the whole aspect of this politicized independence celebration. You never in those days had to call out the people to celebrate independence holiday. The people of themselves had the urge. Now you are having
because there was that national consciousness.
Exactly. Now you were having it play whole day on the radio to tell you that it's independence and the music of Burnham. And I can't see how bad this man can be when he did things to this country. Now you said that he was bad, and yet you were using his instruments to motivate the people. The very instrument that he did in that time when you stayed away in supporting him in making a better Guyana. You got to turn back and use it to fool people's minds. Those of them who don't know. So you fellas got to keep up this stock to let those of them who don't know, who have had a 20-year deficit of knowing what Mr. Burnham and his life was. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you. I want to invite you as well to the symposium on the 31st.
Right.
I hope you'll be there,
yes,
because we're kind of continuing this discussion on the 31st at St. Stanislaus Auditorium. Like I said, that a leader need to understand where he or she is at the time before you can pursue a certain kind of developmental path. And Burnham understood what the requirements were. There's no question about that. When you look at the things that kind of remain as examples, as action that he took, you would realize that the man really understood what was required to advance his country. Morning, you're on the air, sir.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
You know, what surprised me, and I hope the next generation, and, I'll be after the symposium, but, no speech, I wanted no speech Burnham make in 1960. You got to pray on the Razor Hill. No speech, nothing in the Hindu. He said something. That could not pray on at NC and the radio station. Nothing. That is shame. It's embarrassing, Right? And I got this what you got outlined in this generation that is coming up, what Burnham talk about in 1966. You understand? Where that come on? You got a man, Frank Anthony, he must be about 5 or 6 when Burnham would make those comments. And got he talk about the radio station. I'm totally surprised. And it is why people read them, because this history that they teach is not the right history.
All right, thank you.
As I say, I'm hurt.
Thank you, sir.
Good.
Thank you.
I just want to make 2 points. The earlier caller made the point that it was Burnham who brought home Rodney. I think if that question was posed to Burnham would make the point that Rodney was a Guyanese and had a right to be in Guyana. So I don't think we should attribute any coming to Guyana to Burnham of Rodney. Rodney was a Guyanese, and it's where he belonged, and therefore had a right to be here. But this program is not now about Rodney. It's about Burnham and his contribution to independence. And I think that an important thing that people ought to recognize is that a lot of what independence meant had to do with the state of mind, the people's state of mind, whether they saw themselves as servants of the Queen, or whether they saw themselves as independent people who could mold their own destiny. I think one of Burnham's greatest contributions was the way in which he helped to liberate the minds of Guyanese people, to let them see that they had it within themselves to build a nation, to have a vision of their own. I think this was one of his greatest contributions, where Guyanese felt proud to be Guyanese.
Right. They
felt equal to anyone else. And much of this was exemplified by the way in which our foreign service operated. We didn't operate at the behest of any other nation. We operated as independent thinkers, with independent thoughts and independent action, which showed that we had crossed that hurdle of being servants and in servitude, and had in fact emerged as an independent nation underworld seed, and nobody can take that away from Guyana and from Guyanese. And it was all a part of the vision of Burnham, because he saw independence as a very akin to mental liberation, and that's why he placed so much emphasis on education.
Let me take this other call. Morning, you're on the air, sir.
Good morning. Could you tell us Mr. Mercurius is at home?
If Mr. Mercurius,
Is at home?
I won't know. I'm in the studio right now.
I doubt where he is.
Okay, dear. Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, thanks for calling.
Yeah, so Burnham was deep in terms of the transformation at the mental level of the people, bringing us around to rely on what was ours for our own growth and for our development. And in that regard, there was internal opposition, some of which was clothed under the struggle of ethnicity, to Burnham's attempt to really liberate Guyana from any kind of dependency, be it economic or otherwise. Now, again, one had to see that Burnham recognized that independence meant that you had to build your own institutions. And here again was the strength of Burnham. You know, last night I saw a part of the independence celebration at the park, and I saw the National School of Dance, and I smiled. I smiled. Because that was one of the institutions Burnham created.
Yes.
An institution that could go back and build on our arts, based on our historical experiences, based on our heritage. And here today, even as we don't pay as much tribute as we should, we can see the benefit of the wisdom of Burnham's policy and culture being manifest. And this doesn't belong to any one set of people. It belongs to Guyana.
All Guyanese.
Right? It belongs to Guyana.
Let me take this call, Vincent. Morning, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, and happy Independence Anniversary to you folks and to the entire nation.
Thank you very much.
I want to make a contribution. I think the PNC, let me say this first of all, I'm not a member of the PNC, but I think the PNC should have the newspapers going again, and one key part of it should be educating the nation, not only the nation, the world at large, as to who Burnham was. One strong point I want to make is that the current government is a total disgrace to who Cheddi Jagan was.
Yes.
Because in all Burnham decisions, Cheddi Jagan was an integral part of it.
Of course, yes.
And the last point I want to make, I don't want to take too much of your program, I am challenging any other leader outside of Burnham to do what Burnham did. Burnham spent his personal money to establish President's College with money solicited from abroad. No other leader has done that. Take their personal money to do anything in the best interest of this country. Thank you, fellas.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to add on that comment you made is that what has happened to President's College now? And I think in the month of Education Month, I will focus on Burnham's contribution to education, and we may have to make a visit to the President's College to see what the state of affairs is at the moment as far as the President's College is concerned. But like Vincent was pointing out, to really bring about those changes in the minds of the people, because I remember in colonial times, you had to depend on everything coming from London or from some other source. You had to depend for everything used to come from them. But Burnham understood what the requirements were, and to really go about an education program to change people's mind was not an easy task. And between 1966 to when we became a Republican country, people were proud to be Guyanese. People were proud because we were equal to anyone, any part of the world. And that did not come about by a stroke of magic. It came about as a result of the transformational leadership skills that Burnham possessed.
Well, this is important, the transformation, because, for example, a part of the transformation had to do with what we saw as essential foods. This is a controversial area, but uncontroversial is the transformation on the question of saltfish. Prior to independence, and even sometime after independence, in the minds of the Guyanese, if saltfish didn't come from cans, it was not salted fish. But today, without any reference, without any respect for the contribution of Burnham, we all, without question, consume local saltfish. But that became possible because of the transformational nature of Burnham's policies and because he was able at the level of people's thought process to bring them around to understand that you could eat local, you could buy local, and the benefit of that is producing local, a sector which our economy now has that wasn't there before.
Morning, you're on the air.
Hey, just a question I would like to find. I've heard something of this nature that Cherry Javan had received a similar award. Is that so?
That's correct.
Me on it?
Yes, that's right, that's right. He received the award.
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, so that there are things that we take for granted today which are largely attributable to the policies and the leadership of Lyndon Bob Sampson. In the area of food, it's a critical one. Our approach to local fruits. In the old days, there was no Christmas without apples and grapes. Today, one could say, well, you may still have apples and grapes, but there is Christmas without apples and grapes because we've gone through that transformation of our minds. And imagine us not appreciating fruits that are as nutritious, are as tasty as foreign fruits, because our minds were colonized. And today our minds are decolonized.
Morning, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning. I'm listening to your program.
Yes, sir.
I think I just switched on the television. In relation to the state of Gaisuku pertaining to back then and now and the future, right? We have known about the sugar industry not producing. They said it's the lowest in decades.
The lowest forest crop output ever in the history of the industry.
Okay, so what would you guys say pertaining to the future of Gaisuku with the myth the government is trying to push down our throat that is doing so well?
Well, there's a lot of misinformation and inaccurate information being peddled about by the state in relation to
I think it's honesty to the government in recognition. Right. I don't think the government can any longer say to us Gaisuku is doing so well. I think there have been admissions. Kamal Chan, who is a PPP parliamentarian, has come out and made it clear that there are problems with Gaisuku that need to be dealt with. I think the president himself has come to recognize that there are problems with Gaisuku. There are undoubtedly problems with Gaisuku. I think the important point for us here from the independence perspective to recognize is this. One of the solutions to Gaisuku's problem is mechanization. Burnham recognized that in his time. And there were experiments that were started on the east bank of the Marara towards the mechanization of Gaisuku at that time. The opposition at that time opposed those experiments and said we were going to put people out of jobs.
Out of work, right.
Now, people themselves have gone out of those jobs because of the state of the industry. So again, very often Burnham is criticized for the state of the economy. And nobody is prepared to accept that there were other actors, though not in government, who through their mobilization and demobilization contributed to the state of the economy. What they did, they ruined the sugar industry. Mm-hmm. They ruined the sugar industry largely by the degree of sabotage that took place in that industry. And they also sabotaged Burnham's attempt at mechanization. They mobilized the workers against mechanization. And now they can't even mobilize the workers to work in the industry. And so in retrospect, one has to look back and to recognize the vision and the wisdom of Burnham, and to see in context what he was dealing with when he had to deal with an opposition that was doing things that were detrimental and from which we have not yet recovered. But people like to blame Burnham singularly for the problems that we were faced with. Burnham attempted to go into hydro, something we are now struggling with again. He didn't get the support at that time for hydro. And so lots of our resources which went towards the initial work for hydro in the Upper Mazarine Development Project and the Upper Mazruni Road project did not yield the fruit that was intended. But the vision was there. And if you see, we have a president who last night called for support. But if the support had been given years ago, there'd be no need for a call now. We would have been well on the way to prosperity.
Morning, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning.
Morning, sir.
Yes, sir. Morning to yourself, Mr. Alexander. I admire Mr. Alexander a lot. Is somebody that I would like to see at the head of the People's National Congress and all that. But I want to go back a bit on Burnham to some extent. My wife was an academic in this country.
Yes.
To elevate herself to achieve a much higher academic standard to contribute to the nation during that period. What happened during that period is that they had this hope estate, and those people, just to get short items, had to go there and pick up coconuts and all these type of things just to get a few short items. And those were one of the things I could not really accept during that period, because I was serving in the military at the time.
Yes.
And I was hit very hard on that program, because I have been serving conscientiously. I had loved Burnham as a leader. I would have died for his cause. And when my wife had to go through that, just to get a few short items to put on the table, it really hurt me. I have nothing against his program. I have nothing against the party. But that was one of the things I wanted to highlight. And I passed it on to my kids. How they think is up to them. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your contribution.
We are not going to say that Burnham didn't have his weaknesses or didn't make mistakes. But my comment on the Hope Estate was the woman who said that it was Burnham's private property. And here a falsehood was being used to project a case against Burnham. It was not his private property. I want to respond to something earlier as well. There was a caller earlier who made reference to the People's National Congress reform. I just want to make it clear to the public that the Burnham Foundation is a non-governmental organization. It is not a branch of the People's National Congress reform. Obviously, it will have collaboration with the People's National Congress reform, because we are here to push the ideas of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, to commemorate his life and to memorialize him as well. But we are not ourselves a organ of the People's National Congress. We are an independent body that seek to give recognition to Lyndon Forbes Sampson. I just thought I'd make that clear. We're not speaking from a political platform of the PNC. What we say may coincide with what the PNC says. Obviously, we collaborate with them because it's
funded
of the party, and therefore there will be things we will have in common, but we are a non-governmental organization, exist in our own rights, open to the public. You don't have to be a PNC member to be a member of the Burnham Foundation. You can be someone even from another party. But once you contribute to the ideas of Burnham, you're welcome.
Morning, you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning to you.
Yes, sir.
Morning.
Yeah, on behalf of myself and the family, I send out greetings to Guyana, the entire Guyana.
Yes, sir.
For the independence celebration. Also, I want to say that I don't think now is the time that the PNC should, in the words of the president, cooperate with him without force getting him to cooperate on things that he should have, or his government, his party's government should have years ago. All of the things that are being called for by the AFC and APNU. These are things that must be done, in my view, before there can be any, as he said, cooperation. That's all I need.
Okay, thank you for your contribution.
Your contribution is noted. It's noted.
Yes, I was telling viewers that we will be having our symposium. We'll continue this discussion on Forbes Burnham on the 31st at St. Stanislaus College. You're invited, members of the public, anyone. Come with your questions, your comments that you have. because we'll be giving some information out, and you, as part of the audience, you'll have an opportunity to ask your questions, make your comments, and be informed, educated on the Forbes Burnham and its contribution to independence and liberation struggles internationally. Yes, Vincent, I am looking at our time. We have approximately 4 minutes remaining. I would take another call. Morning, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, brothers.
Morning, sir.
And thank you for honoring our brother Moses of our time. What I would like to make note of is a brother from the army who just called in about 2 or 3 calls ago.
Yes.
Highlighting about going to Hope Estate, his wife, and having to pick up.
He said he felt hurt. He felt hurt by it.
Yeah, but I wanted to highlight today what they're going and doing under oath, lying on behalf of people who even ask them for life, Roy and others, and how many black people are killed today. And they got to keep their mouth shut. And they cannot say one word about it. For a meager salary, which they are not in the joint, so it has to rob the poor people today now on the road by stopping them in traffic, begging them for a coffee, and all kind of things like that. Out of them, their meager salary, where they can't ever get more than 5% back upon it. Let them talk about that. Let's see in the army, and all the heads, Green, Brahmin, everybody, let them speak about that under oath. They went and swear under oath to the Activity Linden Commission. And lying, when the Roy you come, I ain't ask them for life for me. They lying for me. They don't know what they got for doing that one with the salary. God bless everybody.
Thank you. Yes, I was saying that we have another 3 minutes, Vincent. I would like you to start to...
I think the important thing for us is to understand the role of Burnham in independence. That Burnham was the one who understood the terrain and was able to chart the course for independence. Yes, Chedi struggled, but Chedi got it wrong. He didn't understand the terrain. He was doing things that would have led us down the wrong road. Burnham took us up the right road. We got independence, and here we are today. And for this, we must give recognition to Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham for what he did to gain independence, and for much more which we will talk about in the future that he did after independence. And we once again invite you to come to the symposium on Friday, 5 p.m. It's the Sanders Laws, where we're discussing Burnham and liberation. Liberation locally, liberation abroad. Thank you, and have a happy independence.
Morning, you're on the air.
Hello, good morning.
Morning, sir. This is your last call because I just have half a minute. Let me hear you.
Okay, sir. I simply want to suggest to the opposition party that given this present situation...
Could you speak a little louder?
I would like to suggest, I also want to make this quickly, sir. I want to suggest that the parties, them, especially the opposition party, come into the strongholds and tell the people what's going on regards to this money laundering thing. Don't let these people just use the TV and the riches to corrupt people. This is a good time for the opposition to get some traction, and I want them to take it. Please get a message over to them.
You're calling the opposition to do some nationwide kind of visits to villages and communities, yes, and educate, inform people as to things that are happening.
Then representatives into the areas and let them see, talk to us, like how we had the first budget cut.
Yes.
Go in and talk to the people.
Okay.
Sit, do your housework, do it.
All right, thank you, and I want to thank you for that contribution, and I want to thank our viewers for being with us today. Until the next fourth Sunday for next month, we're going to be back here again with another program of the State of the Nation. And I want to thank all of you that have contributed to this program today. Of course, I want to say once again that we are inviting you to the symposium because there are lots of information we have to share with you. And I'm hoping that young people, especially students in the upper forms of the secondary schools in Georgetown, you can attend, you can come. Because I think that the whole country need to be educated, informed as to the contributions of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham towards independence and liberation internationally and development of Guyana. My name is Clayton Hinds, and I want to thank you for being with me today on today's program, The State of the Nation. Thank you.